Welcome back, scientists. Today we're going to talk about variables in scientific inquiry. The first variable we're going to discuss is the independent variable. This is what I, as the scientist, change in the experiment. Next, let's talk about the dependent variable. This is an important variable because it is what the scientist will measure. We will think about this variable as a ruler or meter stick, because every time we do an experiment, we have to come up with some data, and we need to be able to tell the difference between our data sets. The control variable is the last variable we're going to discuss today. This one is very important because the scientist chooses to keep some things constant to make sure that any changes that they're seeing in their experiment is due to the independent variable and not to the control variable. So think of this as twins. This is what is going to look absolutely the same in every aspect during this experiment. In summary, there are 3 variables that we're going to think about each time we set up a scientific experiment. They are the independent variable, what I, the scientist, change, the dependent variable, or what we will measure, and the control variables, what we will keep the same in every experiment. Let's go ahead and set up some examples so we can get some practice in figuring out which of these variables are which. So for this experiment, my hypothesis is that sunflowers grow better in the shade of the tree than in the direct sunlight. First, let's talk about the independent variable. Remember, I and independent both begin with I. So what will I as the scientist change? I'm going to change the location of the sunflowers. They'll either be in the shade or in the full sun. Now we need to decide how are we going to measure the success of our experiment. This is the dependent variable. In this exact experiment, we will measure success by how many sunflowers grow. So we'll count the number of sunflowers in the shade and the number of sunflowers in the sun. For your control variables, this is where things get really interesting because there's a lot you need to control in this experiment. These are the items you're going to keep the same for both the sunflowers in the shade and the sunflowers in the direct sunlight. So the number of seeds you plant need to be the same. The amount of water that both sets of plants get is really important. So is the amount of fertilizer. They also need to be spaced adequately, because if we space one too close and one too far away, we won't know if they didn't grow because of overcrowding. You can continue to make a list of control variables possible for this experiment. Let's take a look at another experiment. In this experiment, we're going to decide which chicken lays more eggs, a free-range chicken or a cage-raised chicken. For our independent variable, or what I as the scientist will change, it'll be the environment for the chicken. They'll either be caged or they'll be free-range. For the dependent variable in this experiment, we're going to count the number of eggs each chicken lays. Now, while we can look at a lot of different things, such as chicken health, or the amount of exercise the chicken gets, the weight of the chicken, we've actually already decided, based on our hypothesis, that we're going to count the number of eggs. So when you look at an experiment, make sure that you understand what the scientist is looking to measure. This is your dependent variable. Okay, so now let's make a list of what we're going to keep the same for this experiment. These are our control variables. Since we're looking at chickens, we should keep the type of chicken the same. We should also count the number of eggs they produce on the same day, so we'll keep that length of time the same. We're also going to need to feed the chickens, so let's feed them the same amount and the same type of food. This has been an overview of the 3 types of variables used in scientific inquiry. Thanks for watching.